Welcome to Get Your Bell Rung, Pro Wrestling Podcast. I am your host, KG Landry. Tonight it's not about headlines. It's not about titles. It's not about applause. Tonight is about the man behind the responsibility. My guest has worn many hats in professional wrestling. Leader, advocate, protector of history, and now chairman of the advisory board for the Cauliflower Alley Club, an organization built on brotherhood, legacy, friendship, and taking care of our own. But before the leadership, before the recognition, before the respect, there was a journey that required sacrifice, a journey that demanded resilience, a journey that came with moments of doubt, disappointment, loyalty tested, and character forged in fire. Leadership in the business is not glamorous, it's heavy. It's complicated, it's often thankless, and the higher you rise, the fewer people truly understand the weight you carry. Tonight, we go beyond the surface. We're not just talking about wrestling politics or boardroom decisions. We're talking about the legacy, about responsibility, about protecting the past while shaping the future, and what it costs to stand firm when others fold. Because behind every position of authority is a human being with fears, scars, convictions, and a story that most people never hear. This conversation matters, not because of the title my guest holds, but because of the character it takes to hold it. Ladies and gentlemen, this is not just an interview. This is perspective. This is reflection. This is legacy. Please welcome Mark Charles III. Mark, how are you, my man?
I'm doing well, my friend. How are you tonight?
I am awesome. It is beautiful out. It's over 70 degrees.
Yeah, here too.
Can't complain, man. I mean, a week ago, it was still snowing. So I am good.
Wow, we weren't that bad here. A lot of rain, a lot of 50-degree days, but these 70, 80-degree days are taking over. So
Yeah.
thank
Where
God
are
for
you
that.
located at again?
Pittsburgh,
That's
Pennsylvania.
right. Pittsburgh. We spent time in Pittsburgh a couple of years ago, and actually passed through it in October. We drove the complete East Coast.
Wow.
Love it out there, man. Beautiful country. Beautiful
It's a
country.
nice, yeah, it's nice. It's nice. A lot of gray days. It's something like 60 sunny days, full sun days per year for us. So that's
Right.
305 not sunny days per
You're right.
year. And you're moving to Florida now.
Yeah.
I'm about to join. I'm about to
Man, look,
join you.
I've been in Minnesota for 23 years. That's
Wow, you
23
deserve it.
winters. And those winters have just gotten more and more brutal each and every
Hmm.
year, to the point, like I said, the past 4 years in April, we've had major snowstorms. And now, we're April, 22nd. And again, a week ago, snow. Done.
That's wild. Yeah, I would probably call it quits too.
Yeah. You know, we met CAC, social media friends. But, I know Mark Charles III, the guy involved in professional wrestling.
Hmm.
I want to know, who is Mark Charles III when no one's watching? Who is the man?
Well, it's not too terribly different. I find myself trying to be a diplomat quite often. Especially with in the wrestling world now. There are a lot of people who, it's a drama club really, and in the drama club, what do you have? You have drama, and there's certainly plenty of that, and in life there's plenty of drama. And I used to be very hard nosed about my beliefs, and I used to argue with people online, and it became to a point where it's too much. It's we need to have more kindness in the world. And my mission, the motto of Mark Charles, of the Count Mark Charles III, is fairness, kindness, and impartiality.
Right.
And I try and live those every day, since I feel like being a pro wrestling referee has made me a better person in general. And that's a real thing. And I my goal has been to bring kindness back to wrestling. And the caveat is I'm never sure. I don't know if it was ever here to begin with,
Right.
but here I am trying to bring it back. So it's, it's a lot of positivity. It's a lot of calm in the face of anxiety and danger and that sort of thing. And that's how I live my life in that way.
You, you know, I first started doing this just as something to keep me busy, right? And I was blessed. I started meeting people, started getting to know people. But I think the biggest thing that shocked me was the level of drama. And I don't consider myself someone that's really involved in the business, right? I'm just a fan amongst a million fans with a million podcasts out there, right? But the more people I got to know, I swear to you, it took about 6 months. I started getting more and more DMs. Oh, well, this is going on. And I'm like, I'm not trying to do this type of stuff, man. I don't need the aggravation. I'm doing this to have fun, not the aggravation. So you're right. How long were you in the business before you really realized you talked about the drama before you were really exposed to the drama club?
Yeah, it's so I started this. I was 46 years old when I started. So I had the advantage of age, and I'm not a very wise man, but I had a little bit of wisdom on my side there. So it didn't take very it didn't take very long to recognize this and understand it. When I was a child, you would take those tests to see what should you do when you grow up, and they always said you should be a social worker because I always wanted to help people.
Right,
And what I've come to realize is that I don't have the right words for people all the time. I don't have the ability to fix people's problems, but I do have the ability to listen. And I've been blessed with a terrible memory, so I forget things when people tell me. So all the bad stuff kind of goes
right.
away, and some of the good stuff too. But I tend to remember the good stuff more than anything else. So that has served me very well. And going into my September will be 6 years in the ring for me, and I've enjoyed it more than anything I've done before.
Yeah, I mean, you meet so many incredible people with you meet a lot of different personalities in this industry. Was there a particular something about yourself that was really hard for other people to accept about who you were?
Not really. I was blessed with a good personality, and people say a good smile, and it goes a long way. I I am of the belief that uh people live their lives the way they want to.
Mm,
I don't have to accept whatever you're into, but I do love you anyway. That's the kind of that's where I stand with a lot of things. I may be against something that you're doing, but it doesn't mean I'm against you. And I feel that if people today embrace that more, we would have a much kinder society, a much friendlier place. Everything is so polarized anymore. It's like professional wrestling. You go
right,
in there, and that you two guys fighting each other, two women fighting each other, whatever, four people fighting, eight people fighting. It's it really does really does sound like the real world.
right.
Yeah.
Well, let me ask you this. I found in my experience, people who are like yourself, you're a great person. You really are. You're one of a someone that not only do you have a great personality, but you're just a great human. I found in my opinion. But
Well, appreciate that.
a lot of times, Mark, in order to get there, that person often goes through a lot of trials and tribulations themselves. What pain shaped you the most into
Yeah,
this great human that you are today?
well, I appreciate that. God willing, I can live up to it. I originally from Niagara Falls, New York. I was born to two fantastic parents. Charles, my dad, Chuck, and he was that's where Charles comes from, and Mark Charles III. Um, my dad was a school teacher, my mom was a homemaker, and we lived off of dad's salary, four of us, and I have a younger brother. and we never wanted for anything. I had all, not all, but a lot of the, the LJN toys, the 80s wrestlers that I loved. My dad would always buy that. Mom would always buy that for me. Um, I just, I let things roll off my back pretty easily. If someone's mean to me, that's on them and not me. I don't let that bother me. I don't carry a lot of pain with me. Um, there's a lot of anxiety in my day job, and I don't need it anywhere else. So I just kind of let it roll off. If people want to be grumpy, they could be grumpy. I haven't necessarily gone through a lot of painful times in my life.
Right.
When I was a child, my mom would tell the story that I would come home and have a kid in tow that they'd never seen before. Well, who's this kid? Well, that's my friend Shane. Well, where did you meet Shane? "Oh, I ran into him on the way home from school." "And he's your friend now?" "Yeah, I make friends very easily. um and I just don't give a lot of time to the people who, if you don't like me,
Right.
that's, again, that's not my concern. I can't really worry about that. I'll try to make you like me, and if it doesn't work, then I'm not going to try too hard anymore.
Rick Del
It's served me
Santos.
well.
Rick Del Santos says, "Good evening. Good evening, Rick. Thank you for joining us. I really appreciate it, my friend." Um, who did you need when you were younger that you didn't have, or do you find that you were just a lucky guy that you had everybody in your life at all the right moments and times that you needed?
That is very, very true. um like I say, a good upbringing. My parents were all about, providing a good home, a loving home. My job was to do my homework, and I hated math, and I still hate math, but um social activities were really, a strong point for me. I've always been, my mom used to say, a social butterfly. I've been without my parents for many years, which is difficult, but I've gained such a wonderful family, a support system. I call it a family. In by textbook, it's really only friends, but friends in today's standards become family. And
Right.
in wrestling, um, it's just a beautiful, collection of friends that, um, really, it's people to lean on. It's people to
Mhm.
talk to. People come to me quite a bit. I go to a lot of people, and it's a beautiful thing. I enjoy people. I enjoy talking a lot. I enjoy, asking people questions, and when they ask me questions, it's there's never been a trial by fire for me. I've been blessed in that way.
Right.
I'm very, my faith in God is very strong. Um, I I'm an Orthodox Christian, and I have met, other Orthodox Christians. Mitch Obaid, who's an associate of CAC. We're working closely on the hospitality room committee this year for the 60th reunion
Mhm.
in August. He's also Orthodox Christian, so it's when two Orthodox people find each other, it's like, it's
Right.
like the motorcycle guys who do their little salute to each other and pass it on the street. It's that sort of thing. Um, so it's really been a wonderful. I ramble a lot too. I don't even remember what what your
No, you're
original
fine, brother.
question was.
You're fine.
So
It
I
makes it
apologize.
easier. Believe me. Look, I've had people that I've interviewed, and they're great people, but they gave very short answers, and it's like, man, I got at least an hour here, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
So I love people that open up. For myself, one of my fondest memories, and I talk about this all the time, when I write about it, is with professional wrestling. My father and I watching it. To this day, I still watch professional wrestling because it ties me to my childhood, to my father, who it's gone now, right? I don't have
Mhm.
him anymore, but it's still there every time I watch it. Do you have something like that ties you to professional wrestling, a certain kinship with someone? And is this why you started watching it? Or was there completely different reasons why you got into professional wrestling as a kid?
Yeah. So at 52 years old now, I was a Hulkamaniac when I was 10 or 11 or whatever. It was like 70 or 80, 83. I was born late in 73. 83, 84 was kind of my year. Hulk Hogan was just becoming, the Hulkster. And man, I was a little Hulkamaniac. And now I'm a big Hulkamaniac. I he he taught me to say my prayers, eat my vitamins. I never trained, but that was part of that too. 2 out of 3 ain't bad, right?
Right.
When my dad used to watch it with me, and he would get he would he'd laugh at these. I'd get into it. Oh my gosh, yeah. And dad would say, that's not real, right? What do you mean it's not real? And so here's 10-year-old, 11-year-old me yelling, arguing with my dad. And dad says to me, think about this. If they beat each other up like that every day, every week, they would, they'd be they'd be in a casket by now. And I used to argue with him all the time. So I have fond memories of that. And the 80s, the golden era, everybody feels that the wrestling they grew up was the best wrestling there is, and I'm
Right.
no different. I am I got to meet Don Morocco the other day with Tito Santana. Tito Santana
Wow.
introduced me to Don Morocco, and man, that's awesome. Tito Santana has become a friend of mine. To see these guys that I watched as a kid and idolized, and I had their toys, and I just, those were my heroes. Those are the people I went to school and talked with my friends about. And so many of them have become friends through this journey that started with Virgil, and went on to Tito and Coco. I talk to Coco Beware every couple weeks. Just call. He'll call me. I'll call him. We'll see how we're
Yeah.
doing. I had the real blessing of driving one man gang to New York, Long Island for the big event a few weeks ago, with his wife. And man, they're just like a comedy duo. Those two. We had such a blast in, I don't know, 16 hours in the car, something like
Right.
that, both ways. Um, I'm on the board with Ricky Santana, B. Brian Blair. Brian Blair's been one of my best advocates. Darla Staggs was
Yeah.
never obviously a wrestler, but she's just been
Amazing person.
she's one of the biggest reasons that I have what I have today.
Yeah.
Um, once I fell in with Virgil, who's from Pittsburgh, started taking him around places, and a lot of those other guys got to see me. When I met Virgil, it was in the last maybe just a year and a half left in his life, maybe a little more. He wasn't in great shape physically. He was a shadow of what Virgil used to be.
Right.
But God, he was. I loved him so much. He was my friend, and Virgil rubbed a lot of people the wrong way, and they'll tell you about it, and I get it. I understand that. Um, Near the end of his life, I had taken him to. I think we were in Baltimore, and Ted DiBiase was at the show, and Ted pulled me aside and he said to me, "What's going on with Virgil, with his health?" And I said, it's hard to get a straight story from Virgil because Virgil was an exaggerator,
Right.
but he clearly had health issues. It was hard to get a lot of information out of him. I did not know his sister at that time. I do now. So I was able to fill in a little bit more of that. But um, other guys at the shows would see me, taking care of Virgil because he needed care. He couldn't use his hands. His hands were in fists like this. He couldn't use his hands. He couldn't
Mhm.
raise it higher than his elbow. So when he needed to sign something, I would have to take a pen and put it into his hand. And until the day he died, though, his signature was still really good. So he had that going for him. But when he would sign someone's toy, they might have a set of Virgil and Ted might have signed it already. And I'm thinking, oh, please don't ruin don't ruin this. So I would sort of hold his elbow and he would sign it, and he always did a great job. But guys like Jimmy Hart, when Jimmy saw me without Virgil, he would call, "Hey, how's Virgil doing?" And we'd talk a little bit. So these guys got to see me with Virgil, and I wasn't doing it for any other reason that I loved that man, and I wanted to take care of him in whatever time he had left. So
Right.
Ted saw us together, and he pulled me aside and asked what was going on, and I told him, I don't know exactly what this is, but it's not great. And Ted told me that he had separated himself from Virgil over some things that they had in the past, and he says, but looking at him now and hearing what you had to say, he said, I'm going to have them put our tables together, because he used to have them separate the two of them. He said, and anyone who wants photos of the two of us today, he said, I'm going to give that money to Virgil, because Virgil didn't have anything
Right.
at the end of his life. So, it really warmed my heart, because, I was this bridge that got the two of them back together at the end. And they had one more They had one more show together, and Ted made sure that Virgil sat right next to him, and he and again gave Virgil all the money that they made from the double photos. And that always made me feel good. I always sort of wear that as a little pin of pride that I was able to help those two guys get together, because that's I like doing that. I like bringing people together, and it's important to me. So from there, it was I ran into some folks in Pittsburgh. I was with Keystone State Wrestling Alliance in Pittsburgh when that was here. They sadly closed down last year after 25 years, but that was just sort of a nice round number, and they'd kind of had enough of it, so that shut down. But that was a real brotherhood there that I missed quite a bit. But through them, I met through Trapper Tom Liturgy, our ring announcer there. He introduced me to a couple guys, Anthony Delfonso and Michael Rickard from ATD Promotions. And those guys bring in a lot of names. Excuse me. And knowing that I had the friendship with Virgil, they brought him out to Ohio one time, and they said, "Hey, why don't you pick up Tito Santana on your way in?" So I picked up Tito Santana, and we just hit it off immediately. Now, interestingly about him is that I had met him when I was in high school on a trip to Wichita Falls, Texas. We had a sister city relationship with Niagara Falls, New York. And I'm in Chicago O'Hare Airport, and this was probably, I bet you it was 1990, maybe even 89, but right around there. And I'm sitting in a terminal and at the gate, and this really tall guy comes walking past with his mullet, his black hair, and he's cowboy boots, and he's just pulling this little suitcase behind him. And I look at this face, and I thought, I know this guy, but I'm in Chicago Airport. Who do I know in Chicago, right? Of course, high school kid not realizing that everybody goes through there. And I realized that's Tito Santana. And I said that aloud, and my teacher says, "Who's Tito Santana?" I said, "That's my favorite wrestler." He says, "Well, you have to go talk to him." I can't talk to him. He looks like he's going somewhere. He said, "Son, listen, you're in Chicago O'Hare Airport, and your favorite wrestler just walked by. When will you ever have this chance again?" And that was like one of the greatest lessons of my life, because I use that even today. And I say that to people even today. When you're unsure about it, go do it, because you can only regret that you didn't do it. You won't, be unhappy that you did.
Right.
So I went after him. And this was the days before, phones and cell phones and cameras and all that. So I went up to him. I had my sketchbook, and I got in front of him, and he stopped in front of me. I stopped, and he looked down. I said, "Hello, Mr. Santana." I said, "You're my favorite wrestler." And he shook my hand. He said, "Oh, it's so nice to meet you." And he wrote in my sketchbook, "Tito Santana, arriba." And I still have that. I don't have the sketchbook, but I pulled the page out, and I have that. I have that page. So I told Tito about that. And Tito says, "I think I remember that." And I said, "How on earth could you remember that 30 years ago or whatever it was?"
Right.
And he says, "It doesn't happen very often that anyone," he said, "I'm not the macho man with the flashy hat and all that." He says, I have the bleach blonde hair." He said, "People don't recognize me in as much as you would think in airports." And I remember, he says, "It's only happened a handful of times." And I remember that happening. And I thought, that's unreal. And then we stopped at a rest stop, and there was a Dairy Queen there, and Virgil wanted wanted a hamburger. He loved hamburgers. And Tito Santana shared his onion rings with me. So, that's the coolest thing. One of the
Yeah.
coolest things.
Sean says, before I go, I want to make sure I put over the count for showing up and sounding like the songbird of generations and look like a MF rough snack. Love you, boys. Love you too, Sean. Thank you, brother. I appreciate that,
Spiffy,
man.
good to see you,
Honestly.
Spiffy. That's awesome.
Buck, the American Giant, says, "Good evening,
Oh,
gentlemen." Buck, good evening.
hi,
Look forward to
Bucky.
seeing you in a couple of weeks, my friend. We'll see
I
you at
ouch.
Faircast 4. Let's talk about Virgil for a little bit more.
Sure.
Tell me the story about you first meeting Virgil, and exactly how did you guys connect to the point that you're the guy that was kind of taking care of him.
Well, we ended up through a mutual acquaintance, ended up going to New Jersey for the 80s Wrestling Con in 2021, I think it was, out at Tommy Fierro's thing. And that was really, really fantastic. That was my first sort of exposure to all of this. It's when it became when I realized that these heroes of mine that I watched were actually accessible to me, and that I could meet them and interact with them. and I went out there, and really what got me was that Tito and Greg, the Hammer Valentine, were taking photos together with the Intercontinental belt. So I bought my photo op with the two of them, and got some good photos there. That's when I met Jose Luis Rivera the first time.
Wow.
Well, the only time. Um, I ended up being at the table next to Virgil, and he didn't need my help, so I was kind of hanging out, and there was Steve Lombardi next to me. And it's funny because I told Steve Lombardi, I said, I used to love rooting for you, Steve, and you would never ever win, and it used to break my heart all the time. And it happened with Jose Luis, it
Mhm.
happened with SD Jones, it happened with Barry Horowitz, all these guys. I didn't understand it, but all I wanted was for them to win, and they never won. And he got a laugh out of that. So I got to hang out with the Brooklyn Brawler for the day, and
Nice.
I was talking to him a little bit, and then soon it became, hey, son, take this photo for us, or here, count this money for me. And by the end of the day, we were pals. He probably won't remember that, but I had a great time with it. I have lifelong memories from that. But we were at the hotel. We got in around midnight or so, and got to the room, and the next morning woke up, and that's when I realized Virgil was showing signs of, brain trauma. Um, because he said to me, I remember going to New York or New Jersey or something with a guy, and he had this silver car, and he says the guy had like black hair, and I said to him, it dawned on me, Virgil, are you talking about right now? Is this like my silver car out there? And me, oh yeah, yeah, I guess it is. And that's when I realized, you know what? He's not in great mental shape right now. He was in better physical shape then.
Right.
Um, so I realized then that this is something that might need a little bit more care and subtlety. And when I went downstairs to get some extra towels, and I was at the front desk, and I got the towels, I turned around, and come shuffling down the hallway is Greg Valentine. And I became a kid again. I
Right.
said, Greg Valentine. And he walks up, and I said, Hammer, how are you? He shook my hand. Hey, how you doing, buddy? I'm good, thanks. You know where the breakfast room is? I said, yeah, right down those stairs. Thanks. And off he went. So I went to the breakfast room there with Virgil and Ken, and we walked in, and everyone, hey, Virgil, and I look over, and it's Bill Eadie and Barry Darso, and it's
Wow.
Slick, and it's Ted DiBiase and Bushwhacker Luke, and I was like a kid in a candy shop again. It was absolutely unbelievable. So I start shaking hands, and Barry says, "Hi, I'm Barry. Yeah, I know. Hi, I'm Bill. Yes, I know. It's fantastic." And Bushwhacker Luke told us an amazingly hilarious story that is not safe for public, so I won't tell that. But I'll tell you when I see you next. We
Okay.
just had a fantastic time. Greg Valentine ended up getting into my car. We drove over I drove him over to the venue. I Before we left for the venue, I sat in the lobby waiting around. Mark Henry came over and sat down and talked to him for a little bit, and it was just a magical time there. We got into the venue, and it was the first time I met Jake the Snake Roberts, and I got to meet Jesse Ventura, who was headlining that show. Um, Really fantastic stuff. Haku was there. I was there with Barbara Goodish was there. Barbara knew me,
Barbara.
and Barbara actually was. I was introduced to Barbara, Bruiser Brody's wife, from Pam Morrison, who is JJ Dillon's daughter.
Okay.
And Pam and JJ were here in Pittsburgh with us for a show, and I got to have dinner with them. And Pam and I hit it off famously immediately over coffee, of all things. And since then she had been really, instrumental in this movement of mine. There have been several people who were very instrumental in being there at the right time, and introducing me to the right people. And she introduced me to Barbara, and then I actually met Darla through Pam as well. Um, when Virgil was having a lot of trouble, he was living with a guy who had solicited the CAC, the Cauliflower Alley Club, for some money for Virgil. And Darla, at that time, Pam was the membership coordinator. And she said to Darla, why don't you call Mark? Mark knows Virgil. He can talk to you a little bit about that. And she called me and we talked for over an hour one night. And the next night we talked for over an hour again. So we hit it off famously right there.
Right.
And that really, she was the one that said to me, you need to come to, St. Louis, SICW
Mhm.
for FanFest. I think it was FanFest 2. It was 2 at the old Aviator Hotel. Um, and it may have been the first time I met you too. I can't remember if we
I was
met
there. No, FanFest
at
3 was the
2,
first time.
at 3. Okay,
Yeah.
3. So the year before we were out there, and I had met Bill Apter, who has since become my adopted father. It took a picture with him and Patricia Summerlin, the Sunny from Glow,
Ready? Yep.
one time, and we took a picture at FanFest 3 in St. Louis last year at the Hilton. And Bill looks at that and he says, "Geez, we look like your parents." So they became my adopted parents now, and that's our joke. I call him Daddy O. He calls me Sonny O. We have a good time with that. Um, but we went to she said to me, Brian, Virgil had since died, and Brian Blair and Darla were they sent money immediately for Virgil's funeral, and that was such a blessing. um he said to me, Brian would like to meet you. Why don't you come out to St. Louis? And I did that, and it was like just a beautiful, it was a ramp up to everything to where it is now. So I met Brian and Jim Brunzell. I got a great photo with the killer bees. They were the coolest thing. Found out from Brian that it was, I grew up with Canadian television,
Mhm.
and right at Niagara Falls in New York, I got the Canadian from Ontario, the Canadian television, and we got the WWF from Maple Leaf Gardens there, and we got the WWF from New York on television. So that was really my basis of wrestling back then. But it was, I always had an affinity for Billy Red Lyons, who was a commentator at that point, or an interviewer at that point at Maple Leaf Gardens. And Brian told me that it was Billy Red Lyons that got them the mask gimmick, which is really
Okay.
cool. So I went out there and met Brian, and you know re- rewind to Virgil a little bit. When he died, um, his sister called me one morning at 6:30 in the morning on a Wednesday, and I saw that phone, that ring, and that name come up, and I knew immediately something was wrong. He was in the hospital already, and he went into the hospital on he fell and hit his head at a doctor's office. She took him to the hospital, and they put him in ICU, and I went to visit him right away and met his sister, and became friends with her immediately. She We talked for hours about him, and it was the first time I met her, and she had wanted to meet me for a while, and I didn't know it. And when I walked in, he saw me, his face lit up. "Hey, Mark Charles. Hey, Virg, how you doing?" "I'm good, man. I'm good." And he was always, "I'm good." And I said to his sister, "Well, you must be Tony." She says, "I am." I said, "I'm Mark Charles." I said, "I've been driving Virgil around to different things. We've been friends for a while." She says, "Well, I've wanted to meet you for a long time." I said, "Well, that's sweet." So, we hit it off right away. And she told me later, she says, "You didn't see this, but when you came in, my brother looked at me and he did this." And she said, "I knew you were okay then." That little head nod, that was how she knew I was okay. So, you know, he went to the hospital Saturday, Sunday, then in the ICU. Monday, they put him up in a room, and I went to see him after work, and it was a little bit late. And he was very tired. And I was only there maybe 10, 15 minutes. I said to Virg, "You tired?" "Yeah, man." I said, "You want to should I go? You want to sleep?" "Yeah." "All right. I love you. I'll see you later." "Okay. I love you too, man." And off I went. And I said, "I'll see you tomorrow." And then the next day, I couldn't. Tuesday, I couldn't go. I was at work late. And then Wednesday morning, I got that call that he had passed. So I went to the hospital, and I said, "I'll meet you there." And I got there first, and they let me in with Virgil. The nurse told me that she brought him his breakfast, and he wasn't eating. He didn't want to eat. I don't think he could eat. His hands were bad.
Right.
I used to have to hold hamburgers for him and cut stuff up and feed him with a fork. It's just the way it was. And she said, "I gave him his breakfast and he didn't want to eat. I told him I'll come back and check on you." She said, "When I came back, he had just fallen asleep. And that was it. He peacefully just went in his sleep. And I think about him, and I think about, Rich Ingling, our CAC vice president that we just executive vice president that we just lost. And it was the same thing for him. He just fell asleep. And thank God for that. That's such a beautiful thing that we could all only hope for.
Right.
Um, so his sister came in later and with her son and daughter. And that's when I met that family, the Jones family. They're very sweet people and I love them all. And she said to me, I don't know how I'm going to pay for my brother's funeral. I'm going to have to take out a personal loan. And I said, she was, I don't know, 72, I think at the time. I said, you're not taking out, maybe 73. You're not taking out a personal loan. I said, your job is to mourn your brother. I'll figure out the rest of that. So I set to work trying to figure out the rest of that. And when it became clear there wasn't any money anywhere that we could, pull from, I started a GoFundMe, and that GoFundMe raised $16,000 from people all over the world. And it started off slow, and I was a little bit worried about it. Darla was with me that whole time, and I had gone to the funeral home with Tony, Virgil's sister, because no one else was available to go. So I went there, and we made all the arrangements. And as I'm driving home, wondering how I'm going to pay for this whole thing, Darla says, she called me up and she said, "Did you see what just happened with the GoFundMe?" I said, "No." She said, "Chris Jericho just donated $5,000.
Wow.
So with the $5,000 that Jericho put in and the 2,000 from the CAC, I knew we could, we were very, very close to covering the whole funeral. And um, I hold out hope one day that I could meet Jericho in person. I emailed with him a few times and really expressed my sentiments, but that man's going to get a big hug from me when I finally do get to meet him, and I hope one day that happens. And we raised enough money from other than that, I think the highest donation after that was $200. A lot of them were $5, and it was really just an outpouring of love from little bits from everybody all around the world, and it made it so that we paid for his funeral. We were able to have, she wanted a big party for him after, and they had a beautiful party at a soul food restaurant. It was wonderful food. The people there were just so friendly, and they made me speak at his funeral. I wasn't expecting to say anything, and Mark, get up there. Oh yeah, Mark, get up there. Come on, you did something. You got it. So I went up and cried my eyes out and told some stories about Virgil. And he always had he was always hilarious. The stuff you never knew what was going to come out of his mouth. None of it is safe for work. Um, and we had a great time. I wish I was able to write down all of the Virgil isms. He said a lot of funny things. But I was always the driver, so I couldn't couldn't write anything down, and I got Swiss cheese up here, so not much of it took. But thank God for the generosity of his fans all over the world.
Right.
In a final act of kindness for Virgil was just a beautiful thing.
When Virgil passed away, uh, what part of you did he take with you, if any?
Yeah, like I said, everyone's got a Virgil story. We used to we used to drive around on the road. We'd be through Cannonsburg where he used to live, Pennsylvania, and he'd point out, "Oh, I got kicked out of that Walmart. I got kicked out of that. I got kicked out of that mall." He used to just show up and put his table up and sign autographs. And I'll tell you what, people might make fun of him for that kind of stuff, but I saw him get recognized wherever we went. He would have, when I picked him up from home, he would generally have um, hair and a beard, and it was white. And I realized soon that when he showed up at a show like that, he didn't make as much money because he didn't look like the Virgil of
Right.
old. So I would either take him to a barber before a show, or I would bring clippers and just shave his face and his head myself. And he'd sit there and he'd go, "Oh, I love that. I love it. I love getting skinned," he used to call it. And I have pictures of him. I took him to a barber once, and he's just sitting there with this blissful, his eyes shut, and this blissful look on his face, just mean mug, you getting that, oh, get this. And he loved that stuff. And those are the little memories that I take. There was, you know, times I had to help him in and out of a shower because at that point he just became, a 70-plus-year-old man at that point. He wasn't even the WWF superstar that I knew. He was just a person who needed help, and I was grateful that I was there to help him. Um, so he really taught me a lot about the humanity of celebrity when people, don't think about their words they're saying because they saw someone on TV and they think that person will never hear those things, and they hear them. They know this, and they've got feelings like everyone else. Um, and I still see that stuff, online. People talk about it, and there's times I'll remind people, like, if you say something bad about somebody, they're probably tagged in my post. They're probably going to see it, you know. So, I took not so much he took with him, but he left me a lot. He left me a lot of lessons, and um, he left me a lot of understanding about forgiveness, and about being, kind to people who need it, even if they have wronged you.
Mm.
And especially near the end of their life, when they're not able to care for themselves. Because they're all wonderful lessons. He would get recognized at, I mean, we were at a diner in Blairsville, PA. We forget exactly, out on the way to Altoona. On the way back from Altoona, we had dinner, and he wanted the waitress came up and said, um, "Would you like dessert?" He says, "Oh, I want pie. What kind of pie you got?" And she says, "We have apple." "I want apple." "We got cherry." "Oh, I don't like cherry." She says, "We have peanut butter." He says, "Peanut butter? Who would put peanut butter? What, are you trying to kill me?" He said, "Who would put peanut butter in a pie?" And I said, "Are you allergic to peanuts?" He says, "No, it just sounds terrible." I said, "Virgil, it sounds delicious. I'll take one of those." And the guy next to us started laughing. And, we got into a conversation with him, and I'm calling him Virgil. And the guy looked at him and he said, "Wait a minute, are you Virgil from WWF, Virgil?" "Yeah, that's him. That's him." Then, oh my God, this guy lit up. He knew Virgil, and we're sitting right next to him. He's having dinner next to him and didn't know it.
Yeah.
I had him on a rest stop. We stopped at a Popeyes one time. He wanted chicken, and I went to the bathroom. I came out. There's like four guys around him. Everyone, somebody recognized him, and they come over and they're like kids again. It's the same experience I had. We were at a McDonald's at on the way to a show, excuse me, in Johnstown, PA. And I went to the bathroom. I come back. He's talking to a guy and his son. And I said, "All right, Grandpa, come on, we got we got to go." The guy says, "I never would have thought that I would see Virgil in a McDonald's in Blairsville, PA." And every time I go out to 814 Wrestling out there, I think past that establishment, and I think fondly of him. His sister. When he passed, the, Virgil always went commando. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And when he was buried, the funeral home says, "We need underwear for him." And I said, "Virgil never wore underwear, and he would be very upset if he's buried with underwear." She says, "Well, legally, I guess that we have to bury him with underwear." So he used to talk about his friend Pipe, Roddy Piper, all the time. It was just, he loved Rowdy Piper. And because he needed underwear and he never wore them, I bought, as a tribute for his friend Pipe, I bought a pair of plaid boxer shorts. So
Right.
Virgil was buried with a shirt that said Virgil on it. He was buried in the tracksuit that his sister's family wanted for him, and he was wearing uh, Roddy Piper plaid underwear.
That's awesome.
So yeah, so I hope he would appreciate that. But his sister, um, he says after the funeral, "I have something for you," and she gave me a little urn, a little memorial urn, and some of his ashes are in it. And I have a little display with an action figure of Virgil there, and I made a little backdrop for it. I'll send you a picture later. Don't let
Yes,
me
please
forget
do.
that. Don't let me forget.
Yes.
And his ashes remain there. So My wife loves ghosts and spiritual things like that. She went to um, some kind of a little convention or something, and there was a psychic there, or a medium, or whatever. And Christina says, sometimes I feel like, out of the office, someone's looking into the living room at me from the office. Is that my mom or my grandmother? And she says, "No, no, that doesn't have to do with you." She said, "What is your husband? You're married? Yeah. What does your husband do?" "Well, I'm a production manager and a project manager in my day job." She says, "No, it's not that. Is he involved in athletics?" And she says, "Yeah, he's a pro wrestling referee." She said, "Did one of his friends die recently?" "Yeah, Virgil died." She
Wow.
says, "Virgil's connected to your husband because he was kind to him." "Was your husband kind to him?" "He was." "Well, he's connected to him."
Wow.
So
Wow.
now and she says he kind of stays in the bathroom. I thought, Virg, man, of all the places you could go, You stuck with me in my bathroom? All right. I don't know. So he is not connected to the house, according to this lady. He's connected to me. And you know what? That's just fine by me. I loved him so much. Um, and I like to tell stories about him, especially to people who had
Yeah,
maybe less than stellar interactions with him. Um, he was all about self promotion, and he was Virgil, man. The guy lived, he did a 12-year long career, which is not something that happened to a lot of guys in that era.
right,
Um, Especially with, the business practices back then, the salaries back then, the unstable payment,
right,
such he didn't have any insurance, things like that. So,
right,
I'm grateful to have had the time that I did with him. And, he opened up a lot of doors for me without actively doing that, just
right.
that, people were able to see me with him. And one time we were at a show, and Ric Flair was headlining this thing, and his line was, it never went down till the end of the day. It was just the entire length of the building. And at the end, we're walking out, and I said, "Hey, Flair's over there. You want to say hello to him?" He says, "Yeah, I'll go say hello." I said, "Good, introduce me to him. I've never met him." "Okay, I'll take care of you." And we walk over. He shuffles over to him. He says, "Hey, Rick, how you doing?" Rick looks up. "Hey, Virgil, what's going on?" "Nothing, man. Just wanted to say hi." "Cool, good to see you." And Virgil turned around and walked off. So I just went with him. I never met Ric Flair. I met him later, but that was Virgil's quirky ways. He was always entertaining.
Yeah. Darla Staggs says she's a little late, but she's here. Darla,
I
thanks
love
for
you,
joining
Darla.
us. Yes, we both love you. See you in a couple of weeks.
We've been putting in a lot of work since Rich Ingling passed. Rich did so much. Those shoes are gigantic. And with 4 months until our 60th reunion, the big one, he left us, and boy, we miss him so much. And the amount of things that he did, even quietly, nobody even knew he was doing them. We start to find out things when they're, all of a sudden, someone asks about this. Well, who does this? Oh, that was Rich. Well, who does this? Oh, that was Rich.
Mm.
So we're really trying to pick up a lot of those pieces, figure out what's going on, and we're getting it all done. But it's not without a lot of time and
Yeah,
effort.
yeah, I'm sure. Let's talk about you a little bit more for a second here. In this industry that you're in, do you feel understood in the wrestling world?
Yeah, I think so. One of my biggest one of my biggest moments of pride. I'm not a prideful guy, but I'm proud of the fact that when people at wrestling shows, they'll come up to me, "Hey, are you my referee?" I don't know. I haven't seen a card yet. "Oh man, I hope you are. I really hope you are." And then when I am, they're like, "Oh man, this is awesome. Oh great. Okay, now because they know that I my referee training. I didn't go through all the training for this, but my training started when I was a kid in front of the television. And what I realized by going back and watching YouTube videos, because I do that often, when I am stressed out, when I feel anxiety, I put on old 80s wrestling, WWF, because there's something about hearing Gorilla Monsoon and Bobby Heenan and Jesse Ventura
Oh, it's
and
the
Vince
best.
McMahon, to hear just the voice. Gorilla Monsoon can come on, and all the cares just melt away. It's just that it just is. It was, from my childhood. It's such a beautiful big part of it, and I don't necessarily remember a lot of specific things that happened, but I remember the way that wrestling made me feel, and it always made me feel great. It was such a bonding thing. And I look back at these guys, and I realized that I was watching back then more of the referees than I was even of the wrestlers.
Mhm.
So I started my referee training from guys like, um, Earl and Dave Hebner. Dave Hebner, even before Earl, when Earl was the evil Dave Hebner, and from Gilberto Roman, who's sort of shaped. I'm sort of shaped like Gilberto was, and he looked like he was flamenco dancing in the ring. It's fantastic, and and Dick Worley, who looked like a boxer. Man, that guy's footwork was amazing in there, and Dick Kroll, and then I met Kevin Jeffries last year
Wow.
at CAC, and I didn't realize he was a referee that I watched when I was a kid. And I saw a picture of him later on. I'm like, oh my god, he's a picture of him with Hulk Hogan and Big Boss Man in the ring. I'm like, I remember her. I remember. I just didn't remember his name, but Jack
Right.
Lotz with his little mustache, and Jack Kruger was there, and later on Joey Morella, and um, Jimmy Corderas and guys like that. This James Beard and Billy Silverman. All these guys, I would watch them when I didn't even realize I was watching them. And I learned how to argue from watching Earl Hebner, and guy was a master at that. The distraction on those things, it's an art to just arguing so that something could go on behind your back. I don't think it ever does. I've never seen it, even though I have four eyes. I've never witnessed anything going on behind my back. People yell at me all the time. I don't understand why. I'm doing the best I can in there, but here they are. I learned that from him. I have nowhere near the footwork of Dick Worley, who was a boxer, and just looked that part, and he had the bell bottoms with the little triangles at the bottom, the little white triangles at the bottom, and he had his sleeves rolled up, and you see his muscles, and he got that bashed in nose, and these guys were just so cool to me. And I got to hang out with Billy Silverman at Abdullah the Butcher's birthday party in January in Atlanta, which was really, at the end of that thing, Billy said to me, "You have been a highlight of this trip." And man, you could have given me $1 million in gold, and I wouldn't have been happier than to
Right.
hear that. Um, so I really picked it up from the masters, and I think those guys were the best teachers. I was able to. I felt weird about saying that. I always felt strange about saying that it comes naturally to me,
Mhm.
until I read J.J. Dillon's book. I think it's called Wrestlers Are Like Seagulls. It's a great read. I recommend it. Um, but in there, he said that when he first got into a ring, he learned from being in the ring. That's how he picked it all up. It was on the job training. And he said, I was a natural at this. And I thought, all right, I feel better about saying that, because I'm not the only one. It's not a
Right.
conceited thing to say. It does come naturally. So, I think people, I love it when people are happy that I'm their referee. That says a lot to me. It's a beautiful thing.
Ronnie Gossett, two great fellows right here tonight. Love you guys. Love you too, Ronnie, brother. Hope you're
Brother
getting
Ronnie, hope your leg's doing okay, my
better.
friend.
Absolutely. You say that you're natural at it. Was there anything particular that you struggled with in the beginning, though, being a referee?
Um, I've learned a lot of positioning. I learned about the horseshoe and that sort of thing to stay out of the hard cam. I've learned to get out of the way of the cameras by cameraman tugging at my leg, and that kind of thing. Um, the positioning probably was the biggest thing. I picked up how to make the thing about a referee. I think that's lost quite a bit today, is that the referee is not there to sell pain. A lot of times you see guys, ooh, ooh, and they get the head, and they get ooh, ooh. And I don't go in for that, because it's a wrestler's job to sell the pain, not my job. My job is to sell the urgency. If I don't get in there and stop that guy from choking out that other guy in the corner, that other guy might die.
Right.
So I got to get in there, and I have to make it urgent. And that's my understanding of the thing. Kevin Jeffries told me, his slogan is, get in their face, but give them space. And that's what it's all about. The referee is not there to be the star of the show. You're there to be the, I always say, we're the human enforcement of the rules of wrestling inside the ring. So when the rules need to be enforced, that's when I got to come forward and enforce those rules. And when everything's good and nobody's breaking rules, I stand back and I watch it. I tell people who want to be a referee, or who are referees sometimes, learn from the guys who are the MMA, the boxing referees, the MMA referees, the football referees, any high contact sport. When you see a guy getting pummeled in the MMA ring, the referee's not ooh 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 with his hands
Right.
up in his head and acting like he's hurt, because that guy's hurt, because they're not hurt. So I tell him, act like you've been here before, be a professional, and show up when you need to, and back off when you need to. It's not that difficult to figure out.
Well, I never thought I would ever say this, but not everyone loves you, Mark. Sean Blanchard says he's never happy with Marcus Hydra.
Sean Blanchard can suck an egg. How's that? Here's to you, my friend.
Oh, my buddy Will from
Sean,
Billingfield says, great show so far. And Darla says, I love the blue shirt and the tie gimmick. Dude, that's one of my favorite things about you, Mark, is because this whole time listening to you talk. I love what I'm hearing, but I'm still going back to my 13-year-old self thinking about WWF, the referees, because you have that look. Which brings me to my next question about professional wrestling. Has professional wrestling changed for the better, for the worse? Neither. It's just changed. Everything changes.
Everything changes. I mean, if you ask me, I'm like grumpy old man. Yeah, it's for the worst. The leg slaps, the jumping off the top rope, no look jump off with three people waiting to hold you, catch you. In a real fight, who's going to be there to catch you? If you jump off of something, what am I? I'm going to Samoa Joe that thing. Like I love that gimmick.
Oh, I
Get
bet.
out of
Yeah.
the. Come on, who's gonna? Anyways, I don't want to. I could rant about that
Right.
forever. I always go back to guys like Paul Orndorff who could sell his butt off. The kicks, the punches, they were just um, so believable. And now we have people who put their hands in their pockets and give a little kick, or they pull out a gun. Oh, I don't know. I don't go in for that. I saw a clip of a guy who was, wrestling literally no one, the Invisible Man or whatever.
Oh,
You
yeah.
know, I always say, people mourn the loss of kayfabe sometimes, and I always tell people kayfabe would be real if you believe it. If you believe it, then it becomes real. It's like, Peter Pan, Tinkerbell, whatever. Believe it. Let's bring it back. Why can't we bring it back? We could bring it back. It was here before. Well, people know. Yeah, I get it, but also people believe things that people believe the opposite of what they know sometimes if you're convincing enough. So we could bring that back. We just all would have to do it together.
Right.
The cat's out of the bag, and I keep kayfabe as much as I can. Even, I try to even in interviews like this, but the reality is that it is out of the bag. I haven't. I got out of watching wrestling in about mid '90s. I was at the Art Institute of Pittsburgh, so I was studying. I had gotten my first professional job. I just didn't have a lot of time for it. I met, you know, the woman who would become my wife, my girlfriend back then, and I kind of got out of it. It also didn't really appeal to me anymore. We went from, a one-on-one contest to, factions where it's 5-on-1, and then you had the women in the scantily clad, outfits, and while that's lovely to watch, it also, to me, it watered down everything. Then we had a generation of, the Degeneration X with the thing, and then you have
Right.
the kids doing that in school, and I feel like that degraded society in general. Again, old school mentality. But at this point, I try to watch wrestling, and it's difficult for me because it's so different from what I love. So I just kind of go back to YouTube quite a bit, and
Right.
I'm watching old things. Meeting Barbara opened up. And I mentioned being a WWF guy, so I was never much into AWA, NWA. I wasn't exposed to that very much. But meeting Barbara, meeting Abdullah the Butcher, it opened up like a whole new world for me, and I watch those guys now. In fact, I posted some videos when Rich passed of Bruiser and Abdullah, with Rich as referee, that he had sent me, that he was very proud of, because I was just getting to know Rich too. Um, so if you ask me, it's, in a nutshell, not for the better, but 55,000 people or whatever it was at WrestleMania. Um, it was no 93,173 people at WrestleMania 3,
Right.
but we all know that's not true. But clearly it is very, very popular and good. I'm glad, because I don't want it to go anywhere.
Yeah. Darla says, just like you have to believe in ghosts to see one, talking about kayfabe. Let's talk about Rich England for a moment.
Yeah.
I unfortunately only have was able to speak to him a handful of times, mostly social media. I got to meet him twice in person. But one thing about Rich that gives me to this day, just think about it, that I was the speech that he gave at the CAC, where he told everyone to look around
Mhm.
because not everyone's going to be back.
Yep. Yeah, I
Maybe I'm
so
emotional
he,
just to talk about that because, oh man, it's so true. And then he passes.
I know, I know,
You
and one
had
of
a relationship with him, obviously. You talked about smoking cigars with him and stuff. Talk to me about Rich, man.
yeah, he Rich was Rich had that he had that voice. I love to do an impression of Rich. I don't have it. Um, but he when I joined the CAC as a lifetime member, it wasn't, I don't know, 5 minutes later or something, my phone rang and I didn't recognize the number, but something made me pick it up. I usually don't. And I picked it up and Rich's voice is on there and he called to welcome me to the CAC. And I thought that was just what a cool thing. And that was the first time I met him. And then a year later, less than a year later, I'm well, maybe a little more, but close to it. I was, put onto the advisory board. And one of the things that I had wanted to look into was the membership part of this because there was we didn't do reminders back then. It was like every year you had to sign up, and since I came on, we've got a recurring subscription now, so you don't have to sign up every year. But if you didn't remind yourself, you would miss it. So Darla called me up one night. She said, "Do you know that your membership's about to expire? We were talking about you at our meeting, and Rich looked you up and said, you've got like 2 weeks left or something." Well, I had no idea. So I just to avoid that, I just went and bought the lifetime. But it was at that point I thought, well, maybe I can help that. I offered my help. I've been a graphic designer for 30 plus years, and I said, if there's anything I can do to help with this, let me know. Maybe we make a postcard, send out whatever. Um, so we had offered. I had offered my services there, and shortly after I was appointed to the advisory board, Pam Morrison, who was um, the membership coordinator, she stepped down, and they offered it to me, and I took it because that was a passion for me. I wanted to try and make it easier for the membership to not have to worry about when does this expire. So I took that over, and Rich was the one who was he would get all of the signups on the website, and he would send them to me. I would then do my thing and send out the welcome letters and the certificates and all that. Rich would still take care of the lifetime ones. Um, but I spent a lot of time on the phone with him, and he told me a lot. He taught me a lot about CAC and a lot about the inner workings of it. And one of my greatest moments with him, memories of him, was I came in a day early so I could go visit with Rich into Las Vegas last year for the reunion. And we had some cigars. His brother-in-law showed up. Dale we had a great time. Rich used to be I'm not going to get this exactly right, but he was like head of security for Fremont Street, I think it
Okay.
was. So and he had retired maybe 6 years earlier, I think. But we walked around Fremont Street. I got a personal tour from the former head of security of Fremont Street, and we're walking through, and he sees all the security guards, and they knew him. He knew him by name. They're asking how you doing, hugs, great to see you. He walked us all up and down Fremont. He walked us over to the Mob Museum, and then we went back and had some cigars and heard some stories from Dale, who was a commercial fisherman. Super interesting times, and that was just. I look back on it now. That was one of the things I was looking forward to the most, is just sitting down with Rich again. And you mentioned that he died, and it's still difficult to believe. It's still very difficult to believe. I see a picture of him and I just smile. I think we're all like that. Darla worked with him very closely, and I know it's affected her greatly. It's affected me greatly. Um, I know I'll never see his name in my email box anymore, and it stinks. Or I'm not going to get a text from. He used to send me photos of cigar. We would send each other cigars and dog pictures because he had Malia, his dog, there. I used to sit with him when he would smoke. And he went from Florida. He had this beautiful oasis in Florida, and then he moved to Delaware to be closer to his family. And he would send me beautiful winter pictures from there. I'm sure he missed the nice weather, but um, when I think David Lawson posted that first that video of Rich, and when I saw that, that's like the tears started flowing. That was the first moment that I was like, oh God, to hear the voice and then to hear his words, what they were, like you said, look around because we're not all going to be here. Take the pictures. Like that's the best. People will say, "Oh, look at that Mark. He's over there taking pictures of these guys in the dressing room." man, take your pictures, talk to people, enjoy it while you're here, because you're not going to be here forever. They're not going to be here forever. You don't know when you're going to see them again. Make something memorable, because in the end you have your memories, and then after that you've got nothing. There's nothing left. So, just like my own parents, it's like with Rich, there's no more memories to make.
Right.
Whatever you made, that's what you have. So make the most of it.
Yeah.
It's very important. Those are beautiful words from him.
Yeah. 100%. One thing that struck me about the CAC that, man, there was a moment that was so difficult sitting at the table because CAC did a video in memory of all the ones that we've lost. And some of the, I mean, Herb Simmons blessed me by putting me at one of his tables. And I was by some of the guys that were larger than life heroes when I was a kid.
Yep. Yeah, I know, right? It's
And
stunning.
seeing these guys, man, cry.
Yeah.
It reminded you just how human.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. When Virgil would see a picture of a group of people or a magazine or whatever, he would go through and count all the people that were no longer with him, all his friends that had died. Oh, he's gone, he's gone, he's gone. Oh man, I miss him. It's heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking to see, because these guys that we loved back then are upper 60s, 70 years old. Some of them older than that. Some of them into their 80s. We just won't have them around that much. And when I first started this, my goal was to just meet as many people as I can, shake their hand, and say thank you. And I've been able to do that with a lot of them, and I've been able to do that with I have a lot of friends who are um, sons and daughters of wrestlers. Travis Orndorff is a good friend of
Yeah,
mine, and
great guy.
Andy Weinberg, who's Nikolai Volkov's son, is a good friend of mine. And I've told all these guys that thank you for lending your dad to us. And I don't know if Travis said something to me. He says, don't thank me for that. He said, that was my childhood. That's what I knew. You had your childhood experiences, I had my childhood
Right.
experiences. It's no different from your experiences. And it's a good perspective. It was an eye-opener there. But Dave Hebner's daughter and I talk on Facebook a lot. And Dave, if I could meet somebody, I would have loved to have met Dave. Um, I would have loved to have met Paul Orndorff. That would, it sounds like you hear Travis talk
Yeah.
about him. It's just like, and people will say to me, Nick, Andy said to me, Nikolai, Dad would have loved you, and Travis said the same thing. When I went to Travis's house when we were in Atlanta for Abby's birthday party, and Travis has some of Paul's robes, and he said that blue one. He doesn't have that iconic red one, but he has that iconic blue one, and he pulled it out and he held it open and he said, "Try it on." No
Wow.
way. I can't, no, I can't wear that. I'm not worthy to wear that. He
Right.
says, try it on. I said, Travis, I can't wear that. He says, my dad would be honored for you to wear this. Put it on. So I put it on. And I mean, I can still, it's amazing. I mean, I have, I keep this around because this is the
Right.
robe I wore, right?
Right.
And Travis is making watches now with the Mr. Wonderful logo
Yeah.
on them from the WrestleMania 1 shorts. And, I bought I just got my red one the other day and it's just beautiful. I ordered a blue one. Like, I've spent way too much money on them, but I love them. And I'm so happy that he's doing that. And, he sort of brought me in on the ground floor with the planning. He'd text me photos, and I would tell him my thoughts on it, and we went back and forth. And he just comes up with some absolutely incredible things. And he came up with the blue and the red versions. And man, I'm so glad. I kept telling him, you have to put them in. You got to put them up for sale. You have to. And he did. So I'm happy for that. People are loving that stuff.
Ryan says Rich was absolutely fantastic to me, a great encouraged and a great friend to me, especially going through everything I've been going through medically. He kept in contact with me and would send me letters in the mail with encouraging words. And of course, he would reach out on the phone. Also, thank you for sharing that, Ronnie. Darla says, Mark, you are making me teary eyed talking about Rich. I miss him so much. He was a great guy. Let's talk about the Cauliflower Alley Club for a moment. What moment at a CAC reunion hit you the most emotionally?
Oh man, it's probably the first night that I was there. I ended up in a group with a bunch of people. Um, no class Bobby Bass was in there. Kevin Jeffries was in there. That's when I met Andy Anderson, not Andrew, but Andy Anderson the first
Yep.
time. Um, Ron Hutchison was there. He was getting the trainer award. Um, no, I'm sorry. The trainer was named after him. It was Dr. Tom that got that one. But he's trained so many superstars over the years. Um, the Johnstones were there from Canada. Gosh, it was so many of us over there. I can't remember exactly who else, but Bobby Bass, who I'd never met before, but I heard all about him. He's sitting two seats away from me, and what's he kept saying, "What's your name?" Mark Charles the third. Shithead the third. Yeah, I'm not. I'm shithead the third. To Bobby Bass, it cracks me up. I love that stuff. He says to me, "Don't be upset." He said, "If I didn't love you, I wouldn't make fun of you." I believe it. So just sort of walking in as a stranger to a lot of people, and them just sort of taking me under their wing and letting me be a part of it. I mean, that night was crazy. I ended up sharing. I had fried rice at, like, I don't know, 2 o'clock in the morning or something. It's like the most surreal thing being in Vegas,
Yeah.
and you lose track of time. And Rick McCord's sitting there, and I got this giant pile of fried rice with a giant egg on top and everything. And I sat down, and he's sitting next to me, and he says, "That looks good." I said, "Well, it's 2 o'clock in the morning, Rick." I said, "I can't eat all this. Do you want some?" All right, I'll have a little bit. So I went and got another plate and a spoon, and we were eating fried rice together. I'm like, that's just the coolest. It's the coolest thing. It's the acceptance that,
Right.
um, the acceptance and the friendship, the camaraderie. And like you said, you meet people on Facebook. Really has gone a long way for keeping us all connected, and we get to know each other virtually like that. But then when we're in person, um it's amazing. And then someone introduces you to someone else, and
Right.
you're immediately folded into this friendship. Darla made sure I had a seat at her table for the banquet. um and I told Darla when I started, I said, if I'm going to the reunion, I said, I don't want to just attend the reunion. I want to help. I want to volunteer. Let's give me something to do. So I manned the merch table. We were selling raffle tickets, running around doing whatever. I helped with the registration, getting all the registration, the preparation stuff ready, the name badges and all that kind of stuff. So, I've been really happy to be Darla's right hand, as she says it. And yeah, I wouldn't have it any other way. I'm not going out there to enjoy Vegas.
Mm.
um I go out there to enjoy the people. that's
Right.
that's what that's about for me. So to be accepted, to be I met Stone Kesey, who Coco Beware said to me before I went out there. He said, "Man, you got to find James Carter." He said, "He's probably going to be dressed like you, flashy. He said, probably wear a hat. You got to find James." So we're at the banquet, and I see this guy who's dressed in like a green velour suit and I think he might have had a red vest. I forget. He's wearing a tie, a bow tie maybe, and he had this matching green hat, and I forget, flashy shoes. And I came up to him and I said, "Excuse me, are you James?" And he looked at me like someone punched him. He goes, "Yeah." I said, "I'm Mark Charles." I said, "Coco told me to come say hello to you." And then he burst out laughing, because that was Coco's little rib on him, because nobody calls him James. We know him as Stone
Right.
Kesey. um and I had no idea, so we had a good laugh over that. And then we took some pictures. We did a video of us doing the bird flap, sent it to
Right.
Coco. And so it's people making. And now Stone is selling tables
Yep.
and advertisements. So if you want tables and advertisements for your in the program book for CAC reunion, make sure you get your membership in order. Make sure that you have your reunion tickets, and then you can get yourself a table and sell what you want, display what you want, put an
Yep.
ad in the program book, all that good stuff.
What do younger fans misunderstand about the importance? And I want to stress that word again, the importance of the CAC.
We talk a lot about how do we get young people into this. We have 2PW, Prospect Pro Wrestling in Pittsburgh here, is donating all the funds from several shows coming up, shows that we've had and shows coming up. And it raises awareness, around here, at least, if hopefully beyond, but at least around Pittsburgh. Um, of a lot of young wrestlers who maybe have no idea what that is. The goal of CAC since 1965 was to help people who are in financial trouble, and it originally was actors and boxers and that sort of thing, and it's kind of morphed into mostly wrestlers now. But I tell people all the time, it's $35 a year, $36 a year, something less than $3 a month,
10
and for
cents a
that
day.
month, yeah, you're right, exactly. Anybody could afford that,
Yep.
so jump in and help those. If you enjoyed any bit of wrestling from whatever, from the day you were born until today, jump on an annual membership for the CAC, because it helps so many people who, some of them allow us to talk about it, some want it private, and so we respect that always. But people get into financial trouble, especially the people who were superstars back in, my day, that that money didn't last. They're lucky that they made, what they made back then, but it's not here anymore. Independent contractors, they didn't get company insurance. They didn't, the life insurance, the health insurance, none of that stuff. Um, if you enjoyed them, $35 a year, get on it, get on it, and then come out to Vegas and come get to sit next to these people. Like you said, you sat at a table with people that you watched when you're a kid, and it chokes you up. You're like, wow, this is really cool, because they are accessible to you. It's not people who are, um, unreachable. You can talk to them, you can become friends with them. I have a list of wrestlers in my phone, phone calls away. I talk to a lot of them a lot of the time, and it's really something special, that you don't get many other
You
places,
don't.
if any at
And there's
all.
again, there's such a human side, Mark. Look, my biggest embarrassing moment last year at the CAC, my biggest blunder was, instead of the Cuban assassin, for some reason, the Canadian assassin came out of my mouth when I was talking to him. Now, this is a guy that looks like he would kill you. And him and his wife laughed so hard at me. Yes, I almost wish he would have body slammed me instead of laughing at me.
That's phenomenal. Yeah,
They're
yeah,
great, great, great
yeah, for
people.
sure.
This next question, I went back and forth with how I wanted to word it, because what I left it as is, what responsibility do today's leadership have to yesterday's stars? What I was torn about is, what I was struggling is, I didn't know if I wanted to use the word leadership, or what do fans, what responsibility do fans have to yesterday's stars? Because these men and women literally put their bodies on the line to entertain us.
Yeah.
What's the answer to that question for you?
So in talking to a lot of them, yes, they put their bodies on the line. I thank them for that. Maybe it was Ken Patera that told me, you know, don't think that I didn't get anything out of it either. They enjoyed that.
Right.
That was they spent their lives doing what they love to do. And thank God, to today, people still love them for it. They show up at places, and people come and spend a lot of money to get their autograph and their photos. And I mentioned taking One Man Gang out to the big event in New Jersey, in Long Island, whenever that was, a few weeks ago. Um, he won't get on an airplane, so he and his wife drove from Baton Rouge, Louisiana, to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, like, forget, 16 or 18 hours or something like
Wow.
that.
Yeah.
And they came to my home. They left their car here. We got in mine. We went and had lunch, and then we hit the road to drive another 7 hours to New York. And he was at the table. He and Slick were there. So I got to have breakfast with, like, One Man Gang and Slick, which is just the coolest thing. You hear
Yeah.
them talking. Oh my gosh! And um, the line at the line for so Rick Martel was headlining that thing, and that line never went down. There were like three lines. There was the fast pass, there was the VIP, and then there was the general admission. When we left at four, the show ended at 4 o'clock. At 4:30, there was still a line for Rick Martel, and God bless him. I think he stayed there. I'm sure he stayed there and signed for every single person. But the One Man Gang and Slick, their line was not that long, but it never got shorter.
Right.
It stayed the same length the entire time. People were so happy to see them, and it's heartwarming for me to see that, because George said to me later, he said, if you hadn't driven, I wasn't going to drive all the way to New Jersey. I keep saying New Jersey, to New York. He said, so all those people that were happy to see me, you did that for them. And that's just so cool. I don't want thanks for that. I
Right.
don't need thanks for that. But the fact that I saw that is so heartwarming. So, I would say to anybody, if you enjoyed any part of wrestling, like up to today, honestly, because the stars of today might be the people that need help in 20 or 30 years. So, hop on now and, help them out. They, like you said, they gave up a lot. They gave up a lot of health. You see a lot of people, they can't use their hands, they can't walk well. There are some of them who are in great, like Tito's in great shape. Don Morocco was walking with a walker. You see this all the time. Virgil couldn't use his hands.
Right.
It happens a lot. Lex Luger is in a wheelchair, God love him. But it's important to remember those guys. It's important to help out with those things. It's important to make them understand and always remember that the sacrifices that they gave for our entertainment were not in vain.
Right.
And it's heartwarming to see when people get so excited to see Jimmy Hart or
Yep.
Brutus Beefcake. Brutus Beefcake can't lift his head up, and I had cigars with him when he was in Pittsburgh a couple of years back, and so now I see him, I bring him cigar. He likes torpedo cigars, so I'll bring him a torpedo cigar whenever I know he's going to be around. And it's just little things like that I send Abdullah the Butcher. I got to know him because I met him at the SICW Fan Fest at Herb's thing a couple of years back, and he he told me he likes cigars. He's not allowed to smoke them anymore, but I sent him a box of cigars, and he just keeps them in his mouth. And there was a couple of videos where he's chewing on a cigar, and that warms my heart to see that. It's a little gift because I don't have much to give. What do you give Abdullah the Butcher?
Right.
But it's just a little thing that I know that he'll appreciate, and it's those little things. The Cauliflower Alley Club. When Virgil died, um, I remember saying to Darla, I wish I was like a billionaire that I could do some kind of trust fund that just helps people when they need it. And what I came to realize is that I don't have $1 million, millions of dollars to help people, but I do have a passion for volunteering. And this is the premier thing that I want to put my time into because it's doing the thing that I can't do on my own. This organization is doing the thing that I can't do on my own. So I want to make it as successful as possible. I want to make it as fun as possible for people. We see a lot of times, there's criticisms and that sort of thing, and I understand it. There's always criticisms, but I want to try and help make it enjoyable and memorable for everybody involved because that's important.
Yeah. Sean Blanchard says respect and honor.
Don Blanchard is he's one of my favorite people. Don't tell anybody I said that because man, he's just a big heel. He cheats all the time. And but I tell you what, he says to me all the time, he says, you get it. And I'll tell you what, Sean Blanchard gets it. He Sean Blanchard had the last match I think it was the last singles match. Sean will correct me if I'm wrong, but with Demolition Axe with Bill Eadie. Bill stayed at his apartment when he was here in town years ago. They're good friends. JJ Dillon was a manager for him, and he just loves JJ. He's such an old school guy. And an encyclopedia of wrestling knowledge. If you need something, he remembers all this stuff. I can't remember what I had for breakfast, and he could remember who was NWA champion in
Right.
1985 or whatever. It's just his knowledge is amazing.
That's why I will never ever call myself a wrestling historian. As much as I love wrestling, I've been watching since I was 8 years old. Loved it, and I can talk a lot about professional wrestling. But man, you pin something down on me. I mean, there's still
same.
stuff. There's still stuff I have no idea about. Just when I think, oh no, I know a lot. For instance, I talked to James Hines not long ago.
Yeah.
I never knew that Terry Taylor was one of the original part of the Fantastics.
Oh, I didn't know that either. Same.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's like just when you think you know something, I don't know jack crap about nothing when it comes to pro wrestling.
It's amazing. That's why I love being around these guys. Like I had breakfast in Atlanta with Darla was there and Barbara was there. We had Billy Silverman was there with us, Tony Atlas, and I want to say Barry Rose, not Barry. My mind, Rose. Darla helped me. One of the original Midnight Express.
Oh,
Randy Rose, Randy
yeah.
Rose. Sorry, Randy. Um, and to hear Randy and Tony talk and Billy at this table was just like it's the coolest thing. You get stories that you don't get anywhere else. When these guys are in my car, and I've been very blessed to have a lot of legendary people in my car driving to and from airports and shows and that kind of stuff. You get the stories that you don't get. They don't tell you in the books, they don't tell you in the podcasts, and it's really great experiences in that way. I came off the elevator 9 o'clock in the morning that day, and I heard more. I look over, Tony Atlas, this giant strong arm over there waving to me at the bar. Come over, have breakfast with us. So I went over and we had breakfast. It was really cool, to be to have these guys, and Tony called me up after, and he needed advice about something, and I gave it to him, and he says, "Well, I'm glad I called you." And to be able to be a trusted friend to these guys. And they, when Tito Santana said about me one time that I will do anything for them and not expect anything in return, and that's really it. I don't expect anything in return. If you're my friend, that's fantastic, and I love that. But I don't do anything to get anything back.
Yep.
It's not my way. That's what volunteering is about.
Yep.
I get feelings back. That's
Right.
that's the emotional part that really
Yeah.
speaks to me.
Talk to me about. I know Virgil, his story really touched you. Plus, something broke your heart because of. Talk to me about somebody else, if there's been anybody else. For me, I think the most eye-opening when it came to professional wrestlers from the era. I'm 53 years old. I grew up watching. Was when I met James Harris, Kamala.
Hmm.
Um, Now I didn't meet him at a Comic Con, nothing like that. My vehicle broke down on the side of the road in Mississippi. I'm originally from Louisiana,
Hmm.
and James stopped to check to say, "Hey, bud, you're okay." And it took me a moment. I went, I asked him, Kamala. He's like, "Yeah, super nice guy. Just checked, but he wasn't driving the nicest car."
Hmm.
And it blew my mind because I'm very young. Maybe I don't know if I was 21 yet, right? But in my mind, you see guys like Kamal and so many other guys, WWF, Mid South Wrestling, Georgia Championship Wrestling. You Surely they've made a good living, but then reality hits, as we were talking about, and when he passed away, he was in a wheelchair, lost both of his legs because of
Yeah.
diabetes. He had nothing. I think that's one of the stories that just breaks my heart the most. I'm like you. If I was a rich man, I think that I would do what I could to start something to help more. That's why I love the CAC. That's why I'm a proud member. I just renewed, actually, because of your email. Thank you for reminding me, by the way, Mark.
Welcome.
And I was actually becoming a lifetime member this year. But as we're talking about, we're moving to Florida, across the country. Next year is going to happen, though. But I'm
Mhm.
always going to be a member, right?
Yeah. Yep.
And because that's the best money. I'm very sincere. That is the best money I spend every year is
Yeah.
when I'm giving to the CAC because of what it means to me, right? Because of stories like that. Talk to me about another story that breaks your heart because I want people to hear this because I want people to join the CAC and I will tell you guys how you can join after this.
Yeah. Funny thing about Kamala too. I remember as a kid being devastated when I found out that he could speak English.
Yes. I was
Same with
like that,
George.
by the way. Nikita Koloff, when I met him last year at Fan Fest, and we had about a half an hour conversation, the whole time my mind's being blown because he's talking to I'm like, this just isn't right, man.
I know it's not right. It's yeah, I had the same thing when George the Animal Steel, Sean Blanchard was a good friend of George when obviously before he passed, and on a phone call friend basis like that. When I found out he was a teacher in, well, I forget, Michigan or something. Sean will correct me on that if I'm wrong, but um, uh, like it's these, they're so good at this, and as a kid, of course, you buy into it all. Um, as an adult, maybe a little less so. My dad was onto that one, but um, you know, uh, there's so many heartbreaking stories on all this stuff. There's some things that stories have been told to me in confidence that I won't
Right.
share. Um, one of the one of the things that two people that I've never met, Roddy Piper and Jimmy Snuka. I took Virgil to a show, one of his final ones. Might have been the final one. I don't remember exactly, but it was in Hamburg, at the Hamburg, Pennsylvania Hamburg Field House, which was a longtime WWF venue. And that was the building where Roddy Piper hit Jimmy Snuka in the head with the coconut.
Mm-hmm.
And I watched the video while I was there. You could see that it has like these curved windows up at the top. It's almost like a hangar sort of building, and you could see the windows up there in the video, and here they are right there. The door that Snuka was trying to go through, and man, all that was right there. That history was there, and that was very moving to me that I was able to see that, because I remember seeing a show, I forget exactly which one, but Roddy Piper was talking about Jimmy Snuka never being right after that, um, because according to him, it wasn't a gimmicked coconut, that he actually hit him with a coconut.
Right.
I don't know if that's true, but you have to hit somebody pretty hard for a coconut to explode like that. But even if it was gimmicked, it still was a big hit, and I'm sure that wasn't the only reason that Jimmy maybe wasn't quite
Right.
right. A lifetime of hits will do that for you, but um, that was sort of a very moving moment for me in this journey, is to be like the ghosts are there, the ghost of this history is there in this very building, and that they had chairs there that were from like 1970 or something, and those old folding wooden chairs are
Yep.
probably the chairs that were there when that happened, and all those superstars that went through that building back then. um that one kind of sticks out to me. I know it's not exactly what you're looking for there, but
No,
people, there's so many. Coco has problems with his shoulder and he can't get it fixed, and it's just such an expensive thing, and he'd have to be off work a lot, and he if I had millions of dollars, that nobody would have any problems,
right.
so
Right. Right.
that's why I'm here with CAC, to try and
Yeah.
get some of that
Yeah.
help for
But the great
everybody.
news is this, fans, you guys can help. CAC.org. Go to
Cauliflower
Cauliflower
Alley
Alley
Club.
Club. Yep. .org.
CauliflowerAlleyClub.org.
Yep.
Yep.
.org. Guys, again, it is so inexpensive. I'm telling you, you can become a lifetime member, or become a yearly member where you renew every year, but you will feel so good about
Yes.
where your money is going. I promise you. I think it was either yesterday, day before yesterday, I renewed, and a big old smile on my face when I did it. Yeah,
Awesome.
I really, really did. Um,
It helps.
Go
It
ahead.
helps. It helps people with everyday, to help to pay rent, help to pay medical bills, help to pay. We don't just send out cash because you
Right.
need it. We send out, pay for funeral expenses, pay for, if you have a house fire, if whatever sort of thing comes up, and you can't. Now the rule of thumb here is that the people that we help must have made their living as a pro wrestler for 3 years.
Right.
So it's not, we're not able to help every
Right.
independent wrestler or whatever, but if you've made your living for 3 years, then and it's certainly a consideration. And every once in a while, they may, it's a board discretion thing, but for the most part, that's kind of how that goes. So sometimes people get upset when we can't help, and it's a shame, but we try to help everybody that we can in some capacity or another,
Yeah.
and
Uh,
it is beautiful.
it is. Sean Blanche says, talk about George Allen Still, high school teacher in Michigan.
There it is. I was Michigan. I got it. I remember
And
things.
one other thing about the CAC, what is so great, guys, I'm telling you. So last year, the reunion. If you remember, you get to go to these reunions, right?
Yep.
And I mean, the roast last year of Mick Foley. I
Yeah.
mean, my God, you were able to see some of your childhood heroes eh, perform in a way that you never thought. Like they actually have a funny bone. Like they
Yeah.
actually have a funny bone, and they're
Yeah.
funny, right? It was
Yep.
absolutely great. I, I know you have a meeting coming up, so just a couple of questions
Mhm.
I want you to be able to rest before your meeting. I
Sure.
want to talk about Hulk Hogan for a
Uh,
moment because you talked about Hulk Hogan being, your hero, still is. Um, I guess the first question is, have you ever had the opportunity to meet Hulk Hogan before he passed away?
I did. I did. So I work for a marketing company. We do events and that sort of thing. And when Hulk did his Real American Beer tour, he came through some stores in nearby Ohio, and one of our clients is a big grocery chain here. And so we were able to produce three events, and I went out to one of them, and I made a little care package for him. Um, I had a thank you letter, a little note for him. I gave him one of my T-shirts and a cigar in there. I don't even know if he was a cigar smoker, but I threw one in. Um, I didn't expect him to actually look at it, but he took the time to open it up, and I said to him, you could read the letter. No, I want to read the letter now. And he read it in front of me, and he opened up the shirt and he looked at it. He goes, "Oh, that's you." It had my logo on. It had my logo that I
Nice.
made for myself on there. And he spun it around and he goes, "Here, brother, take this picture." So I had this cool picture of Hulk Hogan holding my shirt, and it's on my screen, my phone screen now. But I look back on that and I'm like, wow, he knew what he was doing for me right there. I would not have had the nerve to say, "Hulk, spin that around, let me take a picture." But he did that for me, and I look back on it now, and now he's gone, just like
Right.
like Rich said. But he gave me that. He shook my hand. He talked to me. I showed up with my Hulk Fears After sign. So I talked to Bill after before I met Hulk, and he said to me, "Your mission is to make a sign that said, Hogan Fears After," because at the I guess I forget if it was NWO days or whatever, but someone in the crowd had made a sign that said Hogan Fears After, and Bill has
Yeah.
that in Apter's Alley in his basement. He's got a beautiful museum in his basement, and that's in there. So he said to me, make a sign, take a picture, send it to me. So I did that, and Hulk saw that, and he popped over that. He had a good laugh over that. And I have a picture of him holding it, and he's like doing his like biting his fingernails, like he's scared. And I sent it to Bill. Bill printed it out and put it in Apter's Alley next to his original sign there too. So yeah, I did get to meet Hulk, and I'm so grateful for it. Um, he was like, it was super special to meet him. It was just like, oh my god! And then he did a promo for the beer at the end, and I got to see part
Yeah.
of that. I'm like, man, I get to see a Hulk Hogan promo. It's just
That's
like I
awesome.
turn into a kid at these things. It's
Absolutely.
it's
Absolutely.
and I don't mind. I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that.
By the
Call me
way,
Mark if you want to. It's in my name.
by the way,
Yeah,
a couple more questions, but I drink coffee during the interviews.
same.
Drop me where I can buy one of your coffee mugs so I
Oh, my
can.
coffee mugs. So these things, I just have them sitting here. I put my own stickers on them, and I have some mugs. If you want one, let me know. Send me
Absolutely.
your address. I'll send you one.
Perfect. We'll do. Let's talk about the sad moment. And that is when we lost. There's so many great icons in this business. There really is. The reason for myself, and I always say I'm only speaking my own opinions, right? I can't speak other people's feelings, but for my own opinion, the reason why Hulk Hogan is the greatest icon for myself is because the man didn't only change the business once, he did it twice.
Yeah.
Twice. And not just in
Mhm.
a little way. I'm talking about changed in a major way. What talk to me about when we lost Hulk Hogan
Mhm.
and what that meant for you?
Yeah, that was. I mean, first of all, a shock. I mean, who saw that coming? But well, I guess what somebody Bubba the Love Sponge or whatever.
Yeah.
Um, that's just it's like it's I don't know. It's the end of an era. It's all the cliches that people could say. For me, one of the most poignant memories that I have of his memory is I went to GrappleCon in Lutz, Florida in October last year, and Barry Rose put on a wonderful show there, and I because I knew Tito and Bill. Uh, Barry asked me if I would pick them up from the airport, so I got Tito, and I went and dropped him off at the hotel, and I went to get Bill, and then Bill said, "I want to go to Hogan's Beach Shop in Clearwater. Can we do that?"
Right.
Absolutely. Well, first we wanted to go. He wanted to go to 106 North Albany and see the Championship Wrestling from Florida, the Sportatorium, which is slated to be demolished, which is heartbreaking.
Mm.
So much history in that building. But we went. He said I called Darla because I was going to meet Darla back at the hotel, and I told her what we were doing. She says, "Well, we want to. Barbara and I want to go." All right, so we went back up to the hotel and then back down and over because the water's right there, and we went to Clearwater. So we walk into Hogan's Beach Shop, and there, outside was a statue of him. So we took photos by the statue, and Bill cut a promo, and we walk in, and it's just Hulk Hogan everywhere. And there's Thunder Lips there, and the statues over here, and all the belts up there with NWO on them, and the winged eagle, which is like my gold standard. And then I look on the TV, and Hulk's on the TV, and they have a running loop of matches, and Hulk's up there, and Virgil was on it. And
Mm.
I look over, and I'm in Hogan's Beach Shop with Bill Apter, with Barbara Goodish, Bruiser Brody's wife,
Yep.
and Darla Staggs, who's done more for me in this what I call my career here, um, than anybody else. And I started to cry. I'm not ashamed of that. I would cry my eyes out. I went over to the corner. I'm watching the TV, and I'm just crying. And I called my wife, and I was like, I can't believe this is what's here. And it felt like at any moment he would just walk through the door. And of course he's not going to. But while we were there, Bill called Jimmy Hart, and then we all went and had dinner at Hogan's Hangout. And just I think I might have seen Guy Fieri on the way sitting up there. I'm not sure it was him. I'd met him years ago. It kind of looked like a shadow of him. I wasn't sure, but we that being there with those folks at that place is something I won't ever forget. And that was Bill's birthday, Bill's 80th birthday party. Another thing Darla did for me, Bill called me and said, "Would you please come to my birthday party? We're going to have it in Albany, New York, at the Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame." And I agreed to it. And I started looking up the travel. It was like 8 hours to fly there, 8 hours to drive there. And then I'd still be in New York in October. And then Darla said, "Why don't you come to Florida? Because we're going to have another birthday party for him over here." I'm like, "Well, that's a no brainer. 2 hours on a plane,
Right.
and I'll be in Florida." So I went out there, and my buddy Sean Colonna came out. We had some cigars under a palm tree, and we celebrated Bill After's 80th birthday. We had cake,
Nice.
which he didn't eat because he doesn't like chocolate cake or won't eat cake. I forget what exactly, Bill. I ate his cake for him, and it was such a special time with all these special people who
Right.
have just accepted me. I couldn't even tell you why. I'm just grateful. I'm very blessed that they have.
Yep. Yep. Have you by chance seen the new Hulk Hogan doc that came out on Netflix? I'm not going to ruin it
So
for you. I'm not going to. If
no,
you decide to watch it, I'm going to tell you to have Kleenex with you. There was a couple of things that got under my skin. I'm not going to lie. People said a couple of things that just aggravated me.
mm,
But for the most part, it was good. Have Kleenex. But this is the question, and I have two questions for you. One of them is in professional wrestling, these larger than life men and women, do you feel like society, right? Fans, non fans, I don't care who they are, society as a whole puts unrealistic things
oh yeah,
on
absolutely.
these people because, again, they're human beings.
Right. That's exactly it. That hits it on the head. Yeah, of course. Every word scrutinized all the time, and people love to do the gotcha moments and all that kind of stuff. Hulk Hogan got in trouble for using a word that Booker T used on national television, and but that kind of stuff. Whatever. We're all human beings. You got to overlook some
Right.
things sometimes. You have to forgive, and whether or not you forget, that's up to you. But yeah, it's interesting you brought that up. I had not seen it. My wife Christina told me that it existed, but today my buddy Jumpin' Jim LaMotta, from commentator from Rise and other things
Yeah.
around here, he told me tonight. He said, "Don't watch the Hulk Hogan video because it will devastate you." And I said, well, all right, I'm totally gonna watch it then. Because
From the jump, man. From the jump.
yeah, I have to see it.
Whew. Anyway, last question for you, man.
Yeah.
When Mark Charles III, your story is told one day, what do you hope the headline is?
Oh my gosh. I don't know. I want to, I hope that I can leave this place better than when I found it, Vance Nevada is our editor of the Ear newsletter. And he asked for a little story about, he wanted to meet the some of the new people on the CAC boards, and he ended up putting a full page. He loved my story so much, he put a full page in there, and I was really humbled by that. That was so cool, with Jimmy Hart on the cover. I'm in a magazine that Jimmy Hart's on the cover of.
And
How
you
does
look
that even
great, by the
happen to
way.
me? What's that?
You look great, by the way.
Thank you. I'm lucky I have one good promo picture. But I hope that people will just realize that take a little bit of kindness. We used to have Hulk Hogan telling us to respect our parents, and we used to have Mr. Rogers telling us how to act in polite society, and we used to have Bob Ross that made everybody feel good. And we don't have those things anymore. Those are three big characters that taught us to be kind and to respect each other. We don't have that anymore, and I wish I had a show where I could talk about how to do that, but I don't. So I do it one person at a time, and hopefully it catches on. The golden
Well,
rule from.
I'm going to tell you that you do matter, because I remember conversations that you and I had when we first met. And I remember you talking about positivity in professional wrestling. And when I was trying to figure out my place with this podcast, how do I want it to be absolutely different, you came to mind. And you, in a roundabout way, was the reason why I decided, you know what, my interviews, no gotcha questions. I want it positive. I want people to leave saying,
Love that.
I learned something, at least from that, instead of, oh, well, I learned some dirt. So
Yeah. If you're not a follower of Fred Ottman's page, Tugboat,
I am.
go
Oh, yeah.
be a follower, because I'll tell you what, I tell him all the time. I love keeping those positive things. He sends those positive
Right.
every morning, and it's beautiful. I wish everyone
You
did
want to
that.
talk about someone having a big head? Tugboat commenting on my post and stuff. I'm not gonna lie.
I know. It's so cool.
Yeah, absolutely. Mark, thank you so much for taking the time out to be on my little podcast, because I know how busy you are. Are you going to be Fan Fest for a couple of weeks?
Yeah, I haven't even bought tickets. I started looking up. Yes, I'm going to be there. I just need to I need a secretary. I wish I need a social secretary to do all this for me.
Well, I'm looking forward to seeing you there, my friend.
Same here,
Is
my
there
friend. Thank
any
you.
dates or anything you want to leave people before?
Let's just keep in mind the CAC reunion, the 60th reunion. Is it 20, 24, 25, 26,
Right.
I think. I hope I got that right. 25, 26, 27. I don't know. I have it written down somewhere. We have the on the fly show that Sin Bodhi puts on before that, the Sunday night. So whatever the Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday is in August, there in the 20th week, 20th day.
Absolutely. And don't forget, Cauliflower Alley Club.org. People, please check it out. Please join. Again, it's the best few cents per day that you spend all year. You really will. Mark,
keep doing what you're doing, my friend. Thank you. I love you very much, and I appreciate
love
this.
you too, brother. Thank you so much, Mark. You have a good one, brother.
You as well. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.